Hi, I'm Grant Nelson. Welcome to Mustache Off Grid. I'm only going to do one shot today, make or miss, just because it's cold. So anyway, here it goes, guys. Oh man. Bailey, come here. Come on. Hi guys, Grant Nelson again here with the Mustache Off Grid YouTube channel. In case you're new to the channel, I cover various off-grid and homesteading topics. I live off-grid in southern Missouri in a one-room cabin with no public utility hookups. So anyway, I'm going to get into the topic today. I figured it was fitting to talk a little bit about cold weather today and some of the things that I was kind of thinking about this week. We're supposed to have about 7 days of, freezing temperatures. We've had about 3 days that are in like 10 degrees and like close to 0 at night. And that being said, it got me to thinking, just imagining, being off-grid, back in the 1800s, really off-grid. And I have that prediction. I'm saying, we're supposed to have 7 days of freezing temperatures. And it got me to thinking, imagine how blind the people back in the 1800s were. When they went out west and things like that, they would have no way to predict the weather other than just looking at the sky and the stars and the different things like that they would use to predict it. But they were completely blind as far as weather like this is fairly abnormal for where I'm at. Usually we have average winter temps of about 40 degrees. Most days in the winter it's 40. We'll get a couple freezing days, but I've been out here the last 2 years. This is going to be my third winter. And I've never had it quite as long of a stretch of freezing temperatures like this. So it is kind of abnormal from what I've seen so far. It's just crazy to think how the fact that we have the weather, how reliant we are on that very simple prediction, from the weathermen, and usually it's fairly accurate. I'll say out here it changes quite a bit, changes quite a bit, and it's a lot of times they're wrong on it because there's a lot of precipitation that comes in and there's a lot of hills and things like that the weather patterns kind of bounce off of or around. Different hills and valleys and things like that, but it's just kind of interesting to think and how reliant we are on that weather thing. So if you're going off grid, keep that in mind. We have modern day weather predictions that we can rely on, but if you're really off grid, keep that in mind as well, where you don't even have a phone or any electricity. And you don't have any contact with society and television or a way to get weather predictions. Keep that in mind. Maybe learning a little bit about meteorology or ways to predict weather or things like that might be something to consider. Or just, making sure that you're prepared for different climate changes all the time. One thing that I've noticed out here, and one thing that I figured is relevant to weather changes and patterns coming in quick. Always put your tools away, put your buckets and nails back in the shed, put everything away, because otherwise it's going to get rained on. If you leave it out there long enough, it's going to get rained on, or you're going to see, oh, there's rain coming in, and you're going to have to put it away later. So best thing is to be prepared and put your tools and your nails and things like that away quickly when you're done with a project. Otherwise it's going to get rained, snowed on, or who knows what else. That's just a tip, guys. If you're going off grid, consider some of these things. I'm just basically, when I get to wintertime out here myself, I try to just get through it. Usually we only have a week or two where it's really cold temperatures, below the 40s. If it's 40 degrees, I can deal with that all day. But when you're in the 30s and the 20s, and like right now where it's the teens, you got to deal with it as it comes. But as far as it goes, I usually just try to survive the winter. And back in the 1800s and things like that, that's exactly what the people did. They would basically grow their produce and grow their vegetables and stock up all their supplies in the summertime specifically to get through winter. They'd be preserving everything and putting things in root cellars and canning or whatever else, until they finally got to a place where they had enough stocked up for the whole winter. And then they'd trap and hunt and things like that in the winter just as a supplement. The fur trappers were a little different because they were out in the wintertime trying to get fur, because that's when the pelts are the primest. And that's when the pelts are the best. If you get a pelt and it's fairly warm out and there hasn't been a lot of deep freezes, this is just a tip, guys, if you're in the fur trapping or interested in getting into it. If you trap when it's too warm, the pelts will be what they call blue. And what that means when the pelt's blue, when you skin an animal, a raccoon or coyote or whatever, it means that when you tan the hide, so when you put the hide in the tanning solution, some of the hair is going to slip out if the pelt's blue. They can still use it. Usually there's a little bit of a, well, usually it's a pretty big discount if you are selling the pelts on blue hides. The more primed, the animals get a nice winter pelt that's real warm and the hair doesn't slip out. So when you tan it, all the hair stays intact. But if it's too warm out and they tan it and they call it blue, the hair will pull out of the pelt as they tan it in a basically a lye solution or a tanning solution of some sort. I haven't done a lot of it, but I've watched a lot of videos on how to tan pelts, and I've played around with some squirrel pelts and some things trying to see if I could get them to a point that was real good, you know, where I could use it for something. And I haven't perfected the craft yet, but if I try it on a coon pelt or something, I'll let you guys know. I haven't been setting a lot of traps this winter because I've had plenty of meat. So I haven't really needed the trap. The pelts aren't worth very much. I've had plenty of meat, so I haven't really wanted to set any traps. I haven't really had a reason to get furs, and usually I'll eat some of the critters I catch, so which is worth quite a bit to me, you know, when you look at the price of meat in the store. That being said, the pelts aren't worth much, and I have plenty of meat, so it's not really worth me trapping a bunch of them right now. I've got a lot of deer meat. I helped the Amish butcher a cow a week or two ago. It was a farmer nearby that had a cow with a hurt leg, and I butchered it, and I got both the tenderloins, and I got about 50 or 60 pounds of ground beef, and I've still got some cold smoked deer from earlier in the season when I shot a deer. So I've got plenty of meat. I haven't really needed the trap lately because of that, and got plenty of rabbits too to eat, so I haven't really needed to. Also, that gets into the next topic, talking about the rabbits. I have to de-thaw their water bowls probably, if not daily, every day or two. I fill them about half full. Another thing I do is I put a couple buckets of water in here. This is a little bit dirty, but it's just for the animals in the morning, because their tubs are going to be frozen blocks of ice in the morning. I might be able to crack them for some water, but I want to have some water that I can give to the pig and the sheep to drink. And they're used to drinking out of ponds, so they'll be fine. Then I put some water for tea and some beans up on top of here. The beans are already done. I just want them to stay warm up there. So just figured I'd show you guys a couple things that I've been doing when it's cold like this, just to make sure I got some water in the morning. I usually pump fresh daily when it's cold like this, because otherwise my tank will be a block of ice. There's no way to get it de-thawed, because we're going to have about 7 days of 0-degree weather. So I leave the tanks empty and then fill them, you know, with whatever water I'm going to use for the day when I get sunshine. So I just pump daily when I have bad weather like this. As you guys can see, I'm de-thawing out all these rabbit water bottles next to the wood stove here. I keep a couple bottles of water just to have some warm water on hand. You can put a pot of water on there too, but you can see it going. Keeping it toasty in here. And but yeah, basically I've been having to de-thaw these out, and then I have bowls that I put in the cages right now, so I'll fill these about a third of the way up tomorrow when I put them out there. Then I'll have to bring the bowls in and do the same thing. With the bowls, you can put them in hot water and it'll de-thaw the ice, you know, it'll de-ice them. But the problem with that is when you do that, the bowls might crack because some of them are ceramic bowls. So anyway, just figured I'd take a quick video just to show you guys what's going on in my cabin today. So that way I can pop the ice. I can fill them back up the next time with fresh water. Sometimes I can get the ice balls to pop out when I fill them with water. But I fill their water bowl about half full. They get a drink. Then I fill them the other half the next time I water them. And then I usually bring them inside and have to de-thaw them all. So you're going to have to be de-thawing animal water tanks and troughs and things like that unless you have a natural running water source for the animals, like a creek or a pond of some sort. Out here, the waters are frozen solid, though. I'm having to de-thaw the water tanks for the pig and the sheep daily. I'm expecting my sheep to have lambs any day now, but she continues to eat grain and hay. She ate grain and hay today, so I don't think she's going to have any lambs today, but you just never know. Usually they won't eat very much the day that they have lambs, and they're kind of finicky, and she hasn't been finicky yet, and she's got a big milk bag, so I'm expecting her to have lambs any day now. But taking care of the livestock in the winter and making sure that they have fresh water and plenty of feed, especially in cold temperatures, it had to have been a serious task back in the 1800s and back in the day. And it's still a serious task today. It's a lot easier if you have electricity, because you can just plug in some cattle tank water heaters. They make these little things that you plug in, you throw them in the tank, and it'll keep the water de-thawed in some climates. Now, I'm not saying that there isn't times or places where that won't work for you, but if one doesn't work, you can usually add more, and you can get the water hot enough. I've also seen people use those same things, the cattle tank ice de-thawers. I'll see if I can find a picture online and put it in the video. I might not, but some of you guys will know what I'm talking about, some of you don't. But if you go to any farm store, you can find some water tank de-icers, and you plug them into a cord or an outlet, and you put them in the water tank, and it'll keep your water de-thawed. But I've seen people use those same things in a big water tank, big old 500-gallon water tank. They put in their greenhouse, and they put about, I don't know, 6 to 10 of them in that tank, so the water's real warm, and it keeps the air temperature in that building super warm, and that way you don't got to run a fire or heat the building with propane or things like that. So it's an electric heat, and that steam comes off the water when you got all those in there, and it heats the building for a winter greenhouse in mild climates. So something to think about if you guys are into gardening or you want a greenhouse and you do have electricity hookups. For me, I'd have to run a wood stove because I'm not hooking up the electricity, or I could maybe get a huge solar setup, which I'm not going to pay for. So just an idea for some of you guys. If you get a big water tank, put a bunch of them cattle de-icers in there, plug them in, and put in your greenhouse. It'll heat the greenhouse in the wintertime. Let's see, what else was I going to talk about here? Couple items that you'll want to have if you're off-grid in the winter, or if you're just, you know, out in the winter, homesteading, survival, farming, whatever. Good wool socks. Obviously, good hat, good coat, insulated clothing. The more layers, the better. You can always take layers off if you're too hot, but you can't put layers on if you don't have enough of them. That's one of the kind of the, I guess, tips that I've heard people say for hunting and survival situations with layers. So wool socks, good waterproof boots. And one thing that I figured I'd mention, I was actually just doing it with my cowboy boots earlier. There is a, if your boots are starting to get water inside of them, they're starting to leak and they're leather boots. If you take some lard and you put lard all over those leather boots that are leaking, the lard actually adds a waterproof layer to boots, to a certain extent. I mean, it's not going to be perfect, but for mild or just a little bit misty weather, snow, things like this, the lard will add a waterproof layer to your boots and make them watertight somewhat. It won't be perfect, but it's better than just having leaky boots and your feet getting all wet and cold, and you basically having to amputate your feet off somewhere. So, you know, one of the great things that you hear about in survival situations a lot, and it's pretty famous from the movie Forrest Gump, is taking care of your feet. Make sure your feet are warm. You know, you can easily get frostbite on your feet if you're out in cold weather somewhere and you're out there for hours and hours on end and you don't have warm boots and your feet are hot. They get real hot and they'll melt the snow and the ice, and your feet start to get wet and they start to get even colder. So just keep that in mind. The rest of your body don't get wet, but if you've got boots that are leaky, your feet can freeze up real easily and you can get frostbite and things like that. Now, our climate out here is real mild. Even this isn't really that bad for me. I'm from northern Illinois, so I'm used to cold winters, and this is pretty mild. I think we got up to like 15 degrees or something today, but make sure you have plenty of firewood chopped. You know, if you're trying to heat your place with wood, which you should if you're off-grid, I think it's the best way to do it. Have plenty of firewood chopped. Test your chimney before the snow comes in, which I've done that quite a bit. Also, if you're putting in a wood stove, make sure you put in a damper. The damper, I didn't have a damper my first 2 winters out here. I finally put a damper in this year, and man, it adds about 20 to 30 degrees warmer in my building just by having that damper in. So put a damper in your chimney stovepipe if you're putting in a wood stove. Otherwise, you'll have to run it full bore. The wood don't last as long. It's just not as efficient if you don't. So let's see, what else was I going to say? For me, I've got a solar well pump, and when I pump that water, I pump fresh water on days like this because I keep above ground tanks, and they'll freeze up if I pump the water into the tanks. So I keep above ground tanks, and I pump fresh water daily when it's like this, if I have enough sunlight, which today I had some sun this morning, but I didn't have that much sunlight. But I also keep a couple 5-gallon buckets of water in my building, fill up some jugs and things like that, keep it in my building so I have plenty of thawed out water. So make sure you bring some water indoors if you're relying on an electric pump. In case that electric goes out, then you have some emergency water. And then also, if you have above ground tanks, if you empty them out, that way you don't got to worry about de-thawing them out when the weather gets like this. And then you can fill them up basically however much you need for the day, 50 gallons, whatever. Empty them out at the, you know, come a few hours after you use that all up. People are probably wondering about showers and cleaning when it's like this. When the weather's like this out here, you can shower and clean and stuff. You want to make it quick, but also you probably don't want to do it quite as much as you normally do when it's warmer. So you kind of just want to let the storm pass by, let the cold weather pass by, and I think, you know, I usually get cleaned up for church and stuff like that. But other than that, I don't like to be outside wet very much in this weather. And I would say that around the 22nd, it's supposed to get back into the 40s and rain. We're supposed to have a few days above freezing in between now and then, but we'll see what happens. See, is there any other tips that I had that I wanted to talk about for people? Extra blankets are always good for when you're sleeping and things like that. Insulation in your buildings, make sure they're well insulated. That'll help a lot. That's about most of the winter tips I have, and it's not all bad. There is some pros to it being cold like this. Like, for example, I froze all my ground beef in individual Ziploc bags, so that way I don't have to, that way I don't just keep it in my 5-gallon bucket. I can keep that in the cooler for a few months. You can freeze blocks of ice for an ice house or a refrigerator of some sort. When it gets cold like this, you can freeze blocks of ice to use for different things, so that's a plus. That's another thing to consider. And in a regular cooler above ground in my region, I've kept ice blocks in a cooler. I usually just freeze a 2-liter bottle of ice. I'll fill it with water and just freeze that thing solid. I've kept maybe 4 or 5 2-liter bottles on ice from about Thanksgiving all the way into mid-March. So you can use that to keep meat and milk and things like that cool. And the temperatures out here are usually in the 40s or 50s this time of year, so it's kind of nice just to have an ice chest to keep things cool. So that's another thing to consider. If you're getting cold temps like this, take advantage of the few positives of snow and ice and all, and the cold weather coming in as you can. Try not to be outside too much. So anyway, guys, that's everything I got. Thank you for watching. God bless. Hope you guys all have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you next time. Bailey. Sit, sit. Nice catch, nice catch. Sit, sit. Finish that one up. Wow, that was a good catch. Sit, sit. We're gonna go extra high on this one. Good catch, good boy.